Hi, good morning. For this episode of Local Law Live, we are featuring Christopher Demerson, the managing attorney of our Bryan branch office, along with Lauren Alcala. Lauren is a staff attorney working on our emergency rental assistance grant. Local Law Live is our monthly virtual outreach series aimed at providing information and resources throughout our 76 county service area. Our Bryan branch office serves Brazos, Burleson, Grimes, Lee, Leon, and Robertson counties. Christopher, will you tell me a little bit about what type of legal matters your office handles?
Sure. First of all, I want to thank you for having us here from the Bryan office and giving you an opportunity to talk about our office and what we do there. We handle a wide range of matters. We get a ton of family law cases, but we handle so much more than family law. We help with consumer issues, for instance, debt collection issues, education law for kids that are seeking 504 plans and those kind of things. We can help with that. We help with victims of abuse, to help them with protective orders. We help them with some of the benefits that they're entitled to under Texas law. We help with military. We have a military and veterans unit that also we can refer cases to for veterans. We do a lot with fair housing, employment issues. We can help people with their criminal history if they have cases that can be expunged that meet the requirements of expunction or a non-disclosure that seals their records. So we help with a wide range of matters, SSI, SSDI. We can cover most issues that are seen with our client demographic.
That is awesome. I just wanted to add to our audience, this presentation is intended to serve as legal information and does not replace legal advice. So on to my next question. So how has COVID affected your practice area? Like, have there been any legal matters that just exacerbated because of COVID?
Yeah, definitely. We saw a peak in evictions. That would be the main issue that we saw. At the beginning of COVID, I think we saw a peak in our domestic violence cases just because people were in the house together and, most families aren't used to being in the house pretty much, around the clock together. There's a break, for work or school or whatever. But I think at the beginning of COVID, people were getting used to the lockdown and we did see a peak in domestic violence cases, but evictions were the ones that we saw extreme rise in evictions, and they were pretty consistent, throughout the whole COVID ordeal and continuing.
Yeah. So since the Bryan office serves a largely rural population, would you say that the impact was different than the impact on urban communities?
I'm not sure I can draw that comparison just because I didn't work much in the urban communities. Our office is relegated to the Brazos Valley area, which is mostly rural. But what I can say is, for instance, in Brazos County, I take my hats off to those judges there. They kind of jumped in front of this COVID thing and started issuing protections pretty quickly. In fact, the Brazos County area was part of the pilot program that was initiated when COVID first happened to give renters protections. And so I can't make the comparison, but what I can say is that it did impact my region, the Brazos Valley area. And for the most part, our courts and community partners were right there, hand in hand with us to see to it that people were getting the protections that they were entitled to, so that we can keep as many people in their homes as possible.
Speaking of those protections, so I know that there were protections in place right after the onset of the pandemic with the CDC. People say moratorium, but it was an order, CDC
Yeah.
order preventing evictions, and that went until October. Did you see in your practice that landlords were using other reasons to evict when they couldn't evict for non-payment? I know I've heard that people, all of a sudden lease violations were coming up, that, I don't know, it might have been something like they're not allowed to have a cousin staying there, but the landlord let them have the cousin staying there for a year, but all of a sudden now, now that's a problem.
Exactly. At the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of landlords were not aware of the order that was issued by the Supreme Court. And so they were still filing for non-payment of rent, which were, pretty, it was a law, so it was not difficult for judges to rule in our favor. But then they started getting, a little wiser and started kind of, I guess, looking at the order. And then we started seeing things like that. They were filing eviction for having a unoccupied or a guest that was staying too long, essentially saying that they were basically living there. And some situations that may have been true, but the issue was the person had been living there for years before the pandemic had started. And now that you want the tenant gone, this is your grounds for trying to evict them when really it was a non-payment of rent case. We saw property managers saying that someone had a criminal history and that was a violation of the lease, but this was the same criminal history that they had when they moved in.
And they applied for the apartment.
Exactly. And so, at the end of the day, it was really a non-payment of rent eviction, which was largely due to the pandemic and people were not working. But, the landlords were just getting frustrated. They weren't getting rent, which I understand their side of the argument also. But at that time, the law was the law and there was an order in place that said you couldn't evict for non-payment of rent.
Right. So now that that is over, do we have any protections now at all for renters?
The protections are now very, very limited. For instance, I would say that the protections I could think of are through organizations like us to have these specialty grants and units that are helping people that meet certain requirements, if they meet our requirements, but outside of that, I can't think of any other protections that are in place right now. That are in place for renters.
Okay. Well, that's sad, except for rental assistance. Well, before we get into that, let me ask Lauren. Lauren, can you explain a little bit to us about the eviction process as it's going right now?
Yes, of course. So in order for your landlord to evict you, you do have to be served with a notice to vacate. The notice to vacate should give you about 3 days to vacate unless the lease provides otherwise. That date in the notice to vacate is not when you have to move out by. Your landlord does still have to take you to court. So you would still have to be served by a constable with the eviction paperwork, go to court, and then if the judge rules in the landlord's favor, then at that point, then the landlord can ask for a writ of possession in order to evict you from the premises.
I want you to say that again. So when you get a notice to vacate, you do not have to move out?
Correct. That's kind of the first step of the process. They still have to take you to court before they can officially evict you from where you're living at.
You can leave if you want to, and it's convenient for them if you do leave, but they still have to file an eviction case.
Yes, you still have to go to court and the judge has to say that you have to move out before you officially have to move out of the premises.
Yes.
Okay. That is correct. And just to piggyback on that, if I can, we get a ton of clients that call and the first thing they will say is, hey, I've been evicted. And once we begin to talk to them and figure out what's going on with their case, it's pretty apparent to us really quickly that, hey, you haven't been evicted. This is just a notice to vacate, letting you know that you have to leave the property within, by Texas law, bare minimum 3 days. And just a side note, 3 days is for people that are not on government assistance, but if you're on housing or something like that, or you're receiving a voucher, the time limit that they give you is different. It's about 30 days that you have to leave. And then there are other protections that come when you're receiving housing or vouchers. But yeah, that's the public's perception is that when they get a notice to vacate that they have been evicted. And that's a large part of the eviction process to us. It's just educating them on their rights that, hey, you haven't been evicted yet. You still have rights that you can go to court, you can contest the eviction, and you can, state your claim and give your side of the story. And so I just wanted to kind of throw that out. There's a lot of
notice to vacate required in order to file the eviction?
Yes.
Yes.
There has to be a notice to vacate that is provided to the tenant first. And then that the time limit in the notice to vacate, whether it's the minimum by Texas Property Code, which is 3 days, or whatever is listed in the lease, which is longer, once that time period expires, then they can file the eviction, but they can't file it a minute before.
Okay, so in public housing, let's say you're in public housing and you get a notice to vacate, but it's for the 3 days, then that's an improper notice?
That is improper notice, correct?
Okay, so then people that are in public housing should know that if they ever receive a notice to vacate for 3 days, that's wrong, and it should be 30.
That is
So-
correct, which is very common because some apartments will have tenants there that are not on public housing, and then we'll have tenants there that receive a voucher or something like that, or rental assistance. And the apartments will apply the eviction process the same, whether it's a tenant that receives government benefits or a tenant that that's not on any housing assistance. They would treat it the same, and typically, we're able to come in and help those people out.
That's great. Okay, so Lauren, what happens once a writ of possession has been issued?
So the writ of possession is a court order that allows for the landlord to take ownership back over the premises. The landlord can obtain the writ of possession 6 days after the judge has ruled in their favor in the eviction hearing. Once the landlord gets the writ of possession, you'll receive a 24-hour notice to vacate. After the 24 hours have passed, if you have not vacated the premises, then an officer will come and allow the landlord to remove you and your belongings from the property.
Okay, so it seems like one of the ways that we've been able to help tenants stay in their homes is helping them catch up on their rent through rental assistance programs. So are there any rental assistance programs in your office's service area?
Yes, so Lone Star Legal Aid did receive a grant through the Texas Access to Justice Foundation for emergency rental assistance. This grant is the ERAP grant that I'm currently working under. The primary purpose of this grant is to provide legal service activities and housing stability clinics, so that way the applicant can have stable housing.
That's great. So what are the common eligibility requirements for the rental assistance programs?
Yes, so in order to be eligible for the grant, the applicant must be below the 125% of the federal poverty guidelines and must be below 80% of the average median income in the area where they're living. The applicant must have also experienced some type of financial impact due to COVID, and there must be housing instability present as well. And the services that we provide must also relate to getting the applicant stable housing.
Okay, so under this grant, you can help renters with these applications.
Correct.
Like you
Correct.
determine whether they're eligible, and then if they are, you help them out and send that on.
Yes, correct. We will help with them filling out the applications and then let them know where those applications can be sent to and get the process started.
Okay. Christopher, does your office host any in-person events with local partners in the Brazos Valley area?
Yes. I'm sorry, did you say did we or do we?
Do you?
Yes. Well, the answer to both is yes. But yeah, in fact, we actually just had one yesterday. Lauren Alcala and another staff member in the Bryan office, Regina Kelly, were out in Grimes County just yesterday, helping out with, well, they hosted an outreach yesterday that focused primarily on evictions and things that are going on in Grimes County that were of a concern to our office. And so we did have an outreach out there yesterday to kind of figure out what's going on with renters and their rights in Grimes County. And we had a great turnout. Lauren was actually present, and so she can speak a little more on that. But we had a great turnout, and hopefully we can help plenty of residents out there in Grimes County figure out their housing issues.
Were renters able to come up to your table, Lauren, to ask for assistance with rental assistance, to ask for help with rental assistance?
Yes, so we still did have to fill out the application just to make sure that they were eligible for Lone Star Legal Aid Services. And then from there, we'll be able to review everything and see what are the next steps that we can take in helping them get the assistance that they need.
That's great. So what partners, Christopher, what just off the top of your head, what partners do you work with the most?
Um, we work, I don't want to leave anybody out, but St. Paul de Vincent is one community partner that we work with pretty closely. And they're one of the partners that help with rental assistance in the community, and they also help with utility assistance. Project Unity, we work with them fairly close, which Project Unity is an awesome organization, not taken away from any other organizations, but in addition to utility assistance and those kind of things, they help with wheels. They do a whole host of things in the community, and I don't want to try to begin to list what they do because I'm going to forget, plenty of things that they do, but they're a great organization that we work with pretty closely also in the community.
That's awesome. Okay. So if there's someone out in the community, a renter that can't find you at one of these events, how should they get in touch with your office if they need help?
One of the, I guess, first ways, you can always go to our website, www.lonestarlegal.org, and that's Lone, LONE, star legal.org. And they can complete an application there. There's a red button they can click right in the middle of the screen that they can go to start their application. They can always call our office at 979-775-5050 and complete an application there online. Or you can call our 1-800 number, which is 1-800-570-4773. And they can also complete an application there. And so we try to make ourselves as available as possible for people to come in and complete applications so that they can get the help that they need.
Thank you. Yeah. So that's a separate number from the main 800 number for our entire program. We have 14 offices. So just want everyone to know that that number goes directly to Brian.
Yes.
Those numbers that Christopher just mentioned go directly to our Brian office. So you'll reach someone there locally to take your application and, and take your case, hopefully, right?
Correct.
All right. I don't see any questions in our chat box from Facebook. So I think we can end here. But I just want to thank both of you so much, Christopher and Lauren. And to our audience, if you or someone needs civil legal help, you can apply for free assistance throughout our 76 county service area by visiting www.lonestarlegal.org. Thanks, guys.